Hi, I'm Greg with Babylon Theater, back with part two of our talk about comedy and tragedy. Part one, which was presented several months back. And as promised, this part two begins with the following sentence. The terms comedy and tragedy do not belong together, which was the result of the Greeks and everybody else after them getting their terminology fundamentally messed up. If the later writers of theater, notably those of the British and French forms, had not carried these mistaken terms to greater extremes than even the Romans had done, today's theater world would probably be inhabited by tales of scientists, mathematicians, and probability theorists. You see, these words, comedy and tragedy, which are, of course, modern attempts to translate the Greek terms, do not really refer to humor and disaster as we blithely assume. They were once, or their ancient progenitors were once, used in the fields of astronomy and geomancy. Comedy and tragedy, which we assume so knowingly to be two ends of the spectrum of human experience, actually have been kidnapped from their real families, which are concerned with the so-called laws of nature. We can be content to leave comedy to remain the same term for our purposes in tonight's discussion. It is the word tragedy, which is the biggest cause of the confusion. To cut to the chase, which I am already in danger of missing out on, it boils down to this. The opposite of comedy is not tragedy. The opposite of comedy is gravity. Of course, someone is saying already, gravity was not realized as a concept until Isaac Newton. The thing is, dear sir or madam, that of course everyone in a certain sense of the word realizes gravity every day. It is one of the most, shall we say, oppressive laws of nature and confronts us constantly. Most human laws, we might note, are proved in the breaking. For example, the laws against driving faster than a certain speed, enforced more strictly in some areas than others. The consequence of breaking the law may result in a brief, if annoying, encounter with the local court system, usually resulting in a certain number of dollars being removed from one's bank account. This type of human-made law is not really a law in the same sense as a law of nature. Or is it? The so-called law of gravity is perhaps the most in-your-face law of them all. So far, if we know everything so far, this law has not yet been convincingly broken by any human action. If and when it ever is, there will no doubt be a sound of scrambling in the legislature of the universe, which will probably be audible everywhere there are ears to hear. Well, Greg and Nolan, of which I am Greg, have been advised by the ancient Babylonian comics, believe it or not, that the only power that is known to be able to contravene the law of gravity is the law of comedy. The ABCs have not claimed to be able to harness this power, only to have witnessed it. They speak evocatively of a kind of lightening up effect which comedy has upon gravity. We shall conclude tonight's lecture with those tantalizing phrases, and we'll begin next time's talk, which will be the last in this discussion, with the words, how then does comedy as a law of nature, exert its power over the law of gravity? And to what extent is it possible for humans now or later to take that power and use it successfully, if only in a limited way, to free us from the tyranny of gravity? This is Greg of Babylon Theater. Hoping you'll join us again for the last part of this talk, which will be coming pretty soon. Good night.